Pierre, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having me. It's interesting, first of all, to meet you, and because I've heard a lot about you, but I've never really got to talk to you. So I'm always interested in talking to anybody that's got passion about Canadian tennis, and it's obvious from what I've heard and what you're doing now that you do. So great to meet
Pierre. Thank you so much. Listen, talking about passion, when I was preparing for this interview, I read your biography multiple times, and it's it's a separate podcast on its own, and not a short one. It's pretty impressive, and the amount of passion you have for the sport. But before we get started and we talk about present things, I would like you to go through maybe some of the things from the past and how you started in tennis.
Well, I'm very, very fortunate. From the start, I've been always surrounded by great people that I've been able to learn from. First of all, my first coach was my father's dentist. I mean, my father was the dentist of the tennis coach at the Montreal Tennis Club. And the tennis coach was not an ordinary tennis coach. He was the world squash champion. And when he developed me as a tennis player, it had nothing to do with strokes and everything. It had how to behave like a champion, how to treat other people like a champion, have the values of a champion. So that was my first really contact. My second contact I had, because he was a squash champion, one of the greatest tennis coaches in the world at the time, Harry Hopman, was also a squash fanatic. And what he'd do is after Wimbledon, he'd send his Australian team to the Montreal Tennis Club so that they'd have a couple of weeks to do what Australians do best, which is party. And while he stayed in Europe, and my coach, Matt Carid, used to take care of the team. And I got to know, Harry Hopman as well, and I trained around. So at a very young age, I was surrounded by excellence. And then I ended up going to college, and I really didn't have a coach for, I would say, a period of 8 years. And I had my college career, and when I went into graduate school, the tennis coach left. And I got the opportunity to become the youngest tennis coach in the U.S. And again, I was very fortunate. I had 2 Canadian players that I recruited, Dave Johnston and Jim Boyce, who are both Canadian junior champions. So I got to work with them and so forth. And then a year and a half later, I decided at the age of 24 to see if I could play. So I got back on tour. I lost 50 pounds, and during that time, I was lucky to meet Jim Layton, who was a legend in coaching, and I saw Hopman again, and so I got a lot of information, which I found very interesting. When I was at university and graduate school, I wrote a paper on how to make money from a tennis camp, and I took an ad in World Tennis at the time, and suddenly that summer, I remember my box 4834 at Mississippi State. I got like $10,000 in cash. I mean, that was a lot of money in those days.
Yes.
And I said, geez, maybe there's something here. So this whole idea of the tennis camps, the academy, and so forth came from there, and that tennis camp is still functioning today, and a lot of them all over the U.S. So it's very fortunate. I worked as a tennis coach at the Montreal Tennis Club. I was very fortunate there. I got to play every Saturday morning with 3 guys, 2 of which were old Davis Cup players, and they'd drink beers every half hour, and then we'd get off and play and so forth. And by the end of the day, they were much better than I was. But, it was, I had a great opportunity. Then I started in Quebec, and after 2 years of working in Quebec, I ended up in a lawsuit, and I was unable to work in Quebec because the indoor club owners said that if I'd sue the club that I was suing, that they wouldn't hire me. So I ended up coming to Burlington and working for the Italian family, which basically was a result of John Sharp and Harry Fauquier, two former Davis Cup players. Harry Fauquier who still is one of my best friends. And I started working there, and I started the tennis academy there. And right from the start, I was lucky again. I got Simon Bartram, who's now a national coach.
Wow, yeah.
Ari Novick, who became the director of coaching, who was my partner in All-Canadian. Marianne Grote, who became the only Native Indian champion in Canada. We had all kinds. So I was very, very fortunate. And my using of the academy in tournaments to fill non-prime time was essential to my success, because I was able to use courts that weren't being used, repackage them, and at least recover some of the investment that for the owners. So I came to the attention of MICC, which at the time had quite a few facilities that went bankrupt. And they hired me, and I started a company. And I worked at ORC, I worked Sudbury, Brantford, Hamilton, running their properties. And then we bought one in London. And the London All-Canadian Club became the center of tennis development in the country. We had over 30 players from across the country. I mean, BC, Alberta, Jennifer Bishop, who's the president of Tennis Canada. I mean, Daniel Nestor came in, who was, a who's who of junior tennis. And it was going very well till now. You'll understand why I talked to you about the regional centers. Tennis Canada decided to do the most in regional centers. And what they did is they took the 30 kids that we had and they put them in their own areas. So suddenly you did not have all the kids together. You destroyed the number one academy. We had to sell the club. So that always remained with me because I saw what it did to my business. And in fact, Tennis Canada, the president of Tennis Canada, Francois Godbout, came and saw what happened, and they decided to do away from the regional centers because the results were not as good and it destroyed what we were doing. But I was lucky and I was able to shift our organization then to York University. And at the time, because they closed the regional center there, we rented the courts and we developed again a very good academy there. We had, I think it was like 7 or 8 Davis Cup players and Fed Cup players actually training there. And Ari was there, Doug Burt, my partner, was there, Chris Pridham, and we just on and on. Grant Connell came and visited, Kalesi Simpson. So it was really a good time. But what happened was when Tennis Canada came to me and asked me to get involved, one of the requirements was that I'd let go of All-Canadian. And All-Canadian, I know what it's like to work for Federation, especially when you have a personality like mine. You're not going to last too long. So I really wanted to get involved because Davis Cup was a very important aspect of my whole tennis life. And they hired me to take over director of coaching as a consultant. And I found Louis Caillé, who I read his book when I came back from Europe in my bath. And I could not believe that a guy from Quebec would write a book about coaching when I thought I was God. And this guy, so I brought him to London, and I had a lot of good coaches. And what I did was I fed him to the coaches, and knowing that they would mess him up completely. Well, after a day and a half, they just came and told me that the guy was brilliant. So, okay, that's fine. So I changed my thing, and we became best friends. And I realized that his method of teaching, although was not the way that all of us had learned, which was how we played and how, which of course is good for the tactical, but when it comes to the technical, we're always telling people how we used to do it when it depends on the individual. Mm-hmm. So I was very, very lucky. I learned a lot from him. He became my Davis Cup. And in fact, I remember they said there was 2 requests that were made when I got the position. I had signed the contract, so I had the right to pick the players. I had the right to pick the location, which those things don't happen anymore, and the staff. And they asked me if I'd take out my earring at the time. And I said, I was thinking about doing that, but now that you've asked me, I'm going to wait a year to take it out. And then the second thing they said to me was Louis Caillé cannot be, he's not palatable to English Canada. I mean, he was a god in Quebec, but, and he's never played or anything else. And, I got him involved, and he was really God sent and really helped. At that time, we came up at Tennis Canada is really the start of what is happening now. We did a strategic plan called Baseline to Excellence. And it was the first time people from everywhere were in there. And for 2 days, I held up the group hostage by saying, I want to know what the objective is. Because we want players in top 50, so I said, no. I said, every decision that's going to be made has got to be based on, what the ultimate goal is. So because of Sport Canada funding, we made it, the goal was to produce players capable of winning Olympic gold and to produce players capable of winning Davis Cup and Fed Cup. So from that standpoint, it was very important because it provided some guidance in, for example, one of the philosophies we had was we're always going to win the doubles. And we just have to split on the first day. And then, anything, because if you're up 2-1 in doubles, you win 80% of the ties. So, we just played and we were able to build confidence in the players in a process. And what happened at the same time, I was very fortunate to be invited by the ITF to travel worldwide. I went to China and talked with the Ministry of Sport, who was one of Mao's general in function of their the Olympics and how they were going to structure their approach. There was a fellow named Richard Schonborn who was king about how to develop the physical aspect. He worked with Graf and Becker. We became very good friends. And the most important part, when you went to these conferences, the Spanish guys are together, the American guys are together, and so forth. I went to the table where the Russians, the Czechs, the Finns were. And I said, let's cut out the bullshit. Who's got the best hockey team? Wow. We became friends for life, every one of those guys. That's all we talk about. Even now, I've got a fella from Finland that sends me messages every time, the junior hockey and everything else.
That's too funny.
So I was very, very fortunate all along to have people around me that I learned from. And the most important one became when I started to play. At the age of 24, I came back to Toronto to train because my mother was living here. And Jim Boyce, who was at my school, says, why don't you look up Harry Folke? And I remember Harry Folke as an obnoxious little runt who was the most high-profile junior we had. And he used to walk around with this collar up and in his clog shoes from Holland, and he was just had his Fred Perry initial shirt, he was just the ultimate English snob. And I asked him if he'd coach me. And I came here, and he coached me for 2 months, almost every day we played. And he'd come on the court, hit 3 balls, and say, okay, let's play. And he wouldn't say a word, and he'd say, yeah, you're getting better. And that was it. And when I became Davis Cup captain, I had so much respect because, he played at center court at Wimbledon and so forth. And he had the best tennis mind, so that when I came to make decisions, he was one person that I could run my thought process through. That was not part of Tennis Canada, because, of course, if you're part of Tennis Canada, you make the decisions based on what's right on Tennis Canada. I wanted to make them based on what was right for the team. And so to this day, we've remained friends, and we still are and talk all the time. So all of this tell you that I was very, very fortunate. I got to meet people all over, and, to me, this has been a dream. I mean, how can you, I'll tell you one last story. I was 23 years old. I finished my MBA. I went for a job interview. I came out, it was a financial company from Connecticut. I came out in my button-down blue shirt, monogram, because I was in the States, striped tie, sweating under my arms. And I came out and I'm like, oh God, this is the rest of my life. And then I saw a guy in a pickup truck with his cowboy boots, his jeans, and a white T-shirt. And I said, that's what I want to do. And I became a tennis.
Pierre, this is, first of all, a lot of funny bits. But this is fascinating, for 15 minutes, we just got a condensed version, of your life. And honestly, very fascinating. It's very important that you brought up the history, of the Federation and how they were creating these centers. Basically, were, from what I'm hearing, like copying the structure that you had in place, in a way, and taking players. So, can I ask you, tennis back then and tennis now? Can you tell us a little bit about
night and day?
So tell us a little bit more about that.
In those days, there was really only one tennis academy, which was ours. And we had international coaches, international players. Now, to have an academy like ours is almost impossible, because the demand of court time that's required from the club does not justify the return to a club, because getting 70% of your court time through tournaments or through the academy during the day, now they can sell. There's such a demand for. So the problem is very, very hard to have the number of courts. Second, we were lucky over the years. We made our money. We've got a support. I mean, we've got marketing. We've got accounting. I mean, how many coaches have the time or the chance to do that? It's very, very difficult. If you're with a club, yes. So now the situation is completely different. In those days, and the same thing has occurred. The one academy that's been hurt the most by the regional centers is ours. And it's been said to me by, yeah, but the other academies are not the same. And I know that from, because that doesn't mean that we have the best academy, but I know that we have the most type of services to service somebody. We have, annual plans, and everything's organized and everything. But it's very hard to ask coaches, whether it's the head coach or a secondary coach, okay, you're going to pass up $80 an hour for 4 hours to go and do a course. They don't, that's not their modus operandi. They want the $320, and I can understand. So it's very, very hard to have the time that I had, or the luck that I had, all the experiences that I had. And we were lucky in the past. The coaches from Tennis Canada used to visit the clubs. So when you got a Louis Caillé coming to talk to you, you had enough material for 2 years, until you figure it out. I mean, like, so, and Ari and so forth, what they did with the coaching was very, very good. We developed all kinds of great technical coaches in our country. A lot of coaches that had never really played at a level, but that understood, that had the passion for tennis, that went to school and learned about coaching. And there was a system there that was really avant-garde and which could bring. So I think one of the reasons we've had success in our country is that we have so many good coaches at the lower level that have been certified that are capable of, providing the right formation for players. So there's a technical aspect, and, so in those days, there was very few. Then more and more came about, and because we were the tennis center, a lot of other places kind of attacked that I was with Tennis Canada, and the tennis center gave me a false advantage that they didn't have. So, that became one of the problems. But like now, I see there's a lot of good academies, but I'm not sure they're as good as they could be. And I don't think that they can do it by themselves. I think Tennis Canada really has to provide programs that provide a pathway during the year, that provide a pathway over 10 years. So in other words, if a kid's 10 or 11 and you have to work with his technique, somebody's dropped the ball. Every single club in the country that's year-round should have at least a program for 5 and 6 year olds. That should be part of, if you're going to be part of Tennis Canada. And, you have all these booklets, which are good. You have to arrange it in 40 weeks, twice a week. That's what the LTAD tells you to do. It's very simple. You sit there and you put 80 hours and you say, okay, we need fitness. How do we do the fitness? You put, and then you give it to the people. All the coaches then can just punch in, go on the computer, they got the lesson, and it works. Why? Somebody's better than the other? No. But collectively, we have so many people that are brilliant. It's just that, unfortunately, when coaches get into conversation with Tennis Canada, rightly so, they worry about their agenda and their problem. They don't see it as overall. Like for me, what happened in Davis Cup is just like blows my mind. I mean, it's a dream come true. I mean, I dreamt about this since I was 10 years old. I mean, that's a story that I'm writing, on court, how that came about. But, I know, what I really want for tennis in this country is to become a real sport. In other words, look at what happened with us winning the Davis Cup.
Yeah, it's huge.
People that nobody said anything. I mean, like, you're a champion of the world of 155 nations? Come on. I mean, we were more worried about the soccer team losing in their third. Yeah,
you're right.
I mean,
and that was a fairy tale of a story, like we were not even in the competition until Russia was kicked out, and then you coming in as a lucky loser, and then you win the whole thing. Like, what a way to prove the world,
If you look back at football, soccer in Europe, one European Cup one year, Serbia got kicked out, and Denmark got in, and Denmark won. This was the same thing. It was a once-in-a-lifetime situation. Think about that.
That's right.
Felix and Dennis did not play in the qualifying. We got beaten by Korea and all these, they got them to Tennis Canada, got them to play. And you can understand why they don't play. But this time, it was unbelievable. The fact that, Tennis Canada is doing a great job of trying to promote it and so forth. Like, they're bringing the Davis Cup to Ace on March 28th. So that, how great is that? We could get the whole city involved and so forth. But it's, the sport is such a great sport for families, for life.
Yeah.
for your health, to reduce health costs. You know, I just wish it could be integrated like it is in Europe, like it is in South America. I mean, you know, we don't have the same respect. So, anyway, so now,
before we continue, sorry, Pierre, go ahead.
No, I said, so now definitely the landscape is different with the clubs and so forth, especially with the demand on the courts and the lack of facilities across the country, which Tennis Canada is doing a good job again at trying to, you know, to promote it. The biggest problem there is we have a mentality in our country that the public and private sector can't work together, although more and more are public-private partnerships. To me, that's the key to everything. If you really want to have a successful country, you take the public money and you take the private brains and you make sure that you have things in place so it doesn't happen like in Russia, where, you know, the private sector runs rampant and, you know, destroys, rapes the country. But, you know, when you look at the number of courts we have in Toronto, I mean, we've got over $100 million worth of real estate in public courts. Think about that. But they say, well, nobody's playing on them. Why? Because they don't have somebody to organize the people to play, you know, and they don't have, but how are we going to do that? Well, get the private sector, get, you know, whoever it is to have their 3 or 4 little courts, and they can, you know, make a living. The kids can make a living during the summer. And people learn the sport, and you use, you know, public land to, you know, to a better end. Yeah. Anyway, I'm ranting.
And now is the time, really. Now is the time to do it because, listen, tennis is so, like with the results that our Canadian team is producing, our Canadian players are producing. That's what you would think, you know, people would start doing, like attracting investments, you know, like from businesses, from, you know, like individuals. This is the time.
I think Mike Downey has done a pretty good job of that. I mean, he's been very, very good at getting money, and, you know, and that's one of the things about the regional centers. Like, the amount of money that was spent compared to the return we got is not, you know, would at least force people to question in the private sector, was there a better way? Which I think there definitely is.
And that's a great segue, because we're actually gonna dive into this right away. Before we continue, just want to clarify some things. I believe Tennis Canada is doing visits right now, like you know, coaches visits. I'm not sure if national coaches. I mean, I know for a fact Severin visits clubs. Jocelyn just visited Ace as well, a couple, maybe a week ago, like 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure. So there is some, you know, national coaches that do that. To what scale? I'm not sure. I know Severin does a lot of visits. Like, she flies in to most of the, like, academies. So there's something that happens there. And I'm not, like, you know, defending one side or the other. Just want to make sure that, you know, it's clear.
Bogdan, what I said was, I didn't say anything about them not coming. I said it used to be done a lot.
Oh, okay, I see. I see. Okay.
If you ask me what was wrong with one, I would say, yeah, they didn't do any visits. One of the things, you know, being outspoken about the regional centers, I'm not against the regional centers. I'm just against the way they operate. You know, there's better ways. For example, with the changes with Borfiga leaving and so forth, you know, it came time to address the things that have been raised. Because if you look at the number of millions that have been spent to produce, at the end of the day, Felix and Bianca, that's all. You know, Milos Raonic was 17. They sent him to Spain. Leila Fernandez was with her father. I mean, Dennis was with his mother. Bianca was real. But she never went to the National Center in Montreal. So to justify,
Bianca went there. Bianca went not full time, not full time. She was.
Yes,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
When we're talking about the system, you were supposed to go from here to there. You know, like, So in other words, if they were able to make changes for Bianca, they could have made changes for other people. But if you look at the list of all the players, okay, I mean, that's all that came out. So the question is, could we have used all that money? Like for me, it's always a business principle, maximizing of resources.
Yeah.
So could you have done more things in a different way, especially rather than create confrontation with the people that should be helping you the most? So everybody was unhappy on the outside that had success. The people that weren't unhappy was the ones that were staying at home with their mother and they needed a court to go to the National Center or whatever. You know, like, okay, the reality was it could have been done very different. And number one was the visits. You know, and Severine's been coming to our place for 2-3 years. She's been outstanding. And but she works in the progressive area. So a lot of the coaches, you know, are above that, you know, so they didn't realize how important it was. Then, you know, we were lucky. We got Jocelyn came in, and recently we had Robbie Menard that came in.
That's right.
He's new. Robbie and I are very good friends. We go way, way back, and he's one of the leading visionary, I think, in this country. And, you know, he came in, and Arb Jaleli, who lives in Burlington, who I brought from Tunisia here, and, you know, was an unbelievable. He's been at the place maybe 6 times, 8 times, working with Andrea Cabio, and now he's working with Vicky Maboko, which is an unbelievable improvement for Vicky. And, you know, so that type of cooperation is new, and it's been done the last 6 months. It's unbelievable. That's exactly what should happen, because it stimulates my coach. My coaches listen to me. They look, oh, this 76-year-old guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But when the guys from Tennis Canada come in, they do. One thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about my career is I spent 2 years in Tunisia when I left Tennis Canada. I went through a major depression, and I had the opportunity to work in Hong Kong, Norway, or Tunisia. And I picked Tunisia because of the sun. And we went there, and I was lucky enough that I got these 3 brothers that nobody wanted on the team because they came from, like, the Hamilton region, and the people from the Toronto region did not want. But I put the 3 brothers on the Davis Cup team. We won more ties than we did ever, total, all the years before. And the 3 of them came to Canada when I left. Arth was going to be the coach. Walid was going to be the player. He became the Davis Cup captain for Tunisia. And Issam, who lived with me for 2 years, is Ange Jaber's coach. And, of course, then we had, you know, on my team, I had Malek Jaziri, who was, you know, a top 100 players. So that whole experience was a great one as well. And having, like, Arf here. So that's what tennis is about, is those communication, interaction.
Yeah, that's great you bring it up, because, again, it shows your passion for the sport and really desire to keep pushing it forward, no matter who you are, no matter where you are. Like the goal is to make it better. How can we make the system better? And it shows, you know, through all your stories. That's what I keep hearing, like how you want to make this game better. So let's talk about that. If we talk about, let's be specific. If we talk about our federation, okay, like, because they're the leading governing body of our sport, they kind of set the tone. So the regional centers, how can we get them to work better for the benefit of our sport?
The first thing you have to realize, regional centers mean different things in different areas. They serve different purposes. So, you know, in Alberta, you know, you're not going to need a regional center that takes 8 under 14 players. There's not 8 under 14 players. Maybe in 10 years down the road, yes. But they should have a regional center where the kids that are 10, 11, 12 can come and compete because there's no place to compete during the winter. So, like to have a place like that, you should have a coach that's there that when the kid needs help, he can come with his coach and the national coach helps, rather than saying, this is my player, help. I mean, look at one of the best coaches in this country, Sylvain Bruneau. When I was national coach, I saw Sylvain Bruneau work in Repentigny with Jocelyn Show and Mariette Pelletier. And, and I said to Louis, what about this guy? And he said, oh, this guy's solid. I said, he's never played, any sport. Yeah, I mean, any tennis. He says, yeah, but he's solid. So, I took him as a national coach down to Florida to work with Andre LaBelle, who was the national coach then. And, he learned and so forth. So all of the coaches learned. Then Andre Lemaire, who was with LeBlanc and Leroux, well, I'd send him on the road with Nestor and Janacek. So he got the opportunity to feel what it's like. So what it did is it provided the opportunity to integrate the private and the public sector and for everybody to get better. You see, people seem to think that because you put a Tennis Canada thing on, you're a better coach than the next guy. Not only do the coaches at Tennis Canada think that, it's normal. The people outside, the parents especially. I mean, there's all kinds of great people out there. I mean, like Robbie Menard's one. I mean, Yves Boulet is another guy. Billy Cowan. I mean, how great is Billy Cowan? I mean, he's been everywhere. The nicest guy. And there's, people don't understand you need different coaches at different stages of development. Very rare are the coaches that can go from the bottom up. So why does Dennis go and get Peter Polansky as his coach? Because Peter Polansky is a great technical coach? No. You have to be around on the tour. You have to give confidence to the player. How can you do that if you've never been out there? So we kind of stopped the growing of our coaches. And I think that we, with Tennis Canada, integrating them more, sending them more, rather than just sending, no offense, I say Severine with Moboko and Kayla Cross. Well, okay, so now, Steckley's with her. That's good. Send somebody that with Kayla Cross, if they're in Santo Domingo here. Send people that can learn from it. Larry Jarovich, I mean, he was unbelievable. Like now he's on the outside, but those are people that are, really beneficial and can bring, and it's important whenever you design something that you have people that will argue with you, that give you, that don't agree with you just to be on your side and get the benefits. How do we make it better? And, okay, is that legitimate? Is it legitimate that you're hurting the clubs or the best academy? Okay, how do we find a different way of doing it? So in Alberta, like I said, it might be a different thing. In BC, I can understand. There's no clubs that have courts, so they've got a national center where they run a program. But that program competes against Larry Jarovich's 3 private sector business, which helps develop the sport in this country. So should it be that if a player wants to go to one or the other, that it costs him the same amount? So he doesn't go to one place because I'm going to get the Tennis Canada jacket. Well, he might be better off being with Larry. So everybody should be part of the Tennis Canada type of deal. Rather than being one against the other, it should be integrated. I mean, that's not that hard to do.
So what would be the structure to integrate it? If do you have any so what would be the purpose of a regional center if you were to organize it?
Well, like I said, the regional center is completely different depending on the location.
Let's say let's pick the big provinces. Like let's say Ontario. Let's say for the sake of
Ontario. The first thing we have to understand the regional center is in a crappy place. If you live in Burlington, it's going to take you 3 hours to get there, day and back and forth every day. How can that make sense that a kid that's 13 spend the time in the car, especially during the winter? I know because I used to work at York and I drive back and forth. I mean, that doesn't make sense. How about a girl like Kayla Cross? She's from London. If her parents did not have the money to do everything that we would have lost. So how do you find a solution? It's very simple. Instead of doing, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then Tuesday and Thursday, you're back. That doesn't make sense. That is against the principles of athlete development. How can you have two people giving different information? It's okay. It's okay. I love teams. I have 5 people that are working with this little girl, Andrea Cabio. We're all working on the same thing. The interpretation of how they work on it is different. I give them that freedom, but at least we're going in the right direction. The same thing could be done. You have a player that's 13 that's in Hamilton. Okay? You sit with the coach, you say, hey, here's the annual plan. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have 6 regroupings every long weekend, and this is what we're going to bring. We're going to bring people. Fantastic, So what do you do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Well, and if you're a national coach or a fitness coach, you can have coaches with their players come there and you help them. You don't show the coach how smart you are. You say, okay, let's do a plan and let's see, come back. I look at my coach. I don't know if you've heard about this new mental training program that Tennis Canada's introduced.
No.
It's a test. And, we've got, because we're an academy, a Gold Academy, we're selected. And, we've got 15 kids going through. And yesterday I got the return of the percentages that the kids have gone in on the apparatus to see. 2 of my coaches' kids are in the lowest. I said, guys, how can we be selling this? How can we believe in this? You told me we believe in this and you don't use it on your own kids. Come on, let's live. So there's a way of the people at the center should be managing their area. Okay? So whoever's in Toronto is responsible for all the kids in Ontario and find a way, Can you go to London? When was the last time they did a regrouping in London to see if there's any kids there that are 9 and 10? When we were in London, we got 8 national champions from London. So, they must be there. It's just how you develop them. So I just think that there's a different way. And especially the regional center in Toronto, it helps the kids in Markham. It doesn't help everybody. And if somebody wants to go there, it's no problem. But there's another place where they're going to get the same type of thing. And Tennis Canada should put, this is what they should be getting. And they can get it there. It shouldn't cost the kid any more than it does to go. But you see, Tennis Canada has a problem with that because they've got to have the $100,000 salary, the fitness salary, the assistant coach salary. So they have to justify this. If they justify it on 5 players instead of 10 players, then it doesn't make sense. But for the game, it's better. So that's why I said we spent so much money. I mean, if you would see the actual millions that we spent to produce, if you'd send somebody into a MBA program and say, okay, develop a system with this money, I mean, we could have found Bianca and Felix anyway, but we could have made it easier for others as well. And, I think that now they're starting to realize that. And, it's just a matter of, I'm happy that Michael Downey was able to get so much money to allow Tennis Canada to really waste some of that money, but getting the result. For me, what's really important is how many players do we have more? How much more is the sport known in the country? How many more indoor facilities do we have? You know, how do we get jobs for our coaches? I mean, how about making the coaching profession, you know, where you retire, you have them. What happens when you're 60 years old and, you know, suddenly you get fired? I mean, you know, as a coach, it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
So, you know, like there's different parts that need to be professionalized. And Tennis Canada is the body that can do that. The same as what they're doing now with the pipeline. Bogdan?
Let's talk about it.
Okay. You know, the pipeline is a great initiative. But where does a pipeline start? At 5 and 6. So, you know, we have to have programs where we can recruit families to the club nationwide and then develop those kids for 2 or 3 years till we find a way to regroup them. And that's where those regroupings become very important. But you can't move a kid from their house when they're that young.
Yeah. So in your opinion, the job, again, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's important that we, you know, get the message across right, that the role of the regional center is pretty much to help the clubs develop players in their own environment and to provide necessary support for that particular player or players in their own home environment. That's
no.
Okay.
No, sorry. The home environment has got to be able to provide what Tennis Canada would provide. Quality of coaches, quality of support staff, number of hours, number of private lessons, access to support services. You know, if you have those, you're not any different. I mean, no offense, but I certainly would match my staff on an ongoing basis against the staff of the regional centers. You know, I mean, they're great guys. I mean, God, Hugo DeFlo's a super kid, you know? But, you know, what kind of experience? It's hard for, you know, you have to understand there's different ways. And again, it always comes down to the location. In BC, it's different. But in Ontario, you know, there could be different ways. And you say, okay, fine. What about the people that don't want to go to an academy? Okay. Just make sure that they develop a program, that they go and run their own program at the National Center. You know, they can get other players and organize themselves. And the Tennis Canada guy goes and makes sure that, you know, he gives his knowledge to everybody. And you tie in funding to achievements of those objectives. It's not hard. You know, after a cycle, you go, okay, let's see what happened here. Okay, this is the performance level. I believe in long-term planning. What I did for years on the ITF, we developed the long-term planning, the first document ever here in Canada, or I did with my staff then. And I went through the ITF for 3 years, showing people how we did that. I remember watching Billie Jean King, Stan Smith sitting in the front row looking at us as if we were idiots, you know. But the planning process, the same way as at 16, when Daniel Nestor was going to be 20, he was supposed to play Davis Cup. It happened, you know. That's how you really manage the player. And you make the corrections as you go along. But at least that is how the players in the club should be managed. And now, when we're talking about the club, if my player's 14 and like Vicky Maboko was at our place, she could have stayed till she was 13. Then she shouldn't have been at our place. Because, you know, as much as I love her, as much as, you know, that's not what's best for her. You know, she should go to IMG. But is IMG going to give her a coach, or is they're going to put her on court number 3? You know, big difference. Big difference. And, you know, the parents weren't happy and they brought her back, you know. And the thing is the management. Management's more important than coaching. Managing the athlete and you can always find a coach. I'm sorry, you know, I'm one, you can replace him and everybody, you know, endears themselves to the athlete and to that, you know, and this is the best guy ever. Does he make the decision? Does he have the experience to make the decision? And that's what matters in a player. I mean, it's those decisions. I mean, as soon as a player becomes like a Vicky Maboko's level, I mean, you have to deal with agents. And agents, you know, how do they get paid? By selling their, you know, and making sure that their players are out there, you know. Ange Jabeur is a perfect example. After she lost in Fort Worth, you know, I said to Sam, send her to the mountain with her husband, who's her fitness coach, hire another fitness coach, and he can take care of the regeneration, and send her there for a month. He says, Pierre, that's going to be hard. Of course. She was getting $100,000 an hour to go to Saudi Arabia and talk about women, Arab women in sport. You know, what are you going to do when you're a kid that's never had any money and suddenly you have that opportunity? So, you know, management becomes very, very important. And, you know, the Tennis Canada people in Toronto, how great if they go and check. You know, people say they have fitness programs. I'm sorry. You know, I've talked to Tennis Canada coaches that I've gone and seen the fitness program. They're not fitness programs. No. You know, there's a room and that's it. You know, that's not. So, you know, how do we make the clubs better so that at least kids from 5 to 12 should be in clubs? After that, I don't have problems with the regrouping. You know, 12 to 14, fine. If the kid's good at 14, you know, then he needs a specialized, you know, approach. But to keep kids in the program at 15 when they're not going to go anywhere, like 80 of the kids that we had, that money, when you think that it's $25,000 a year minimum for each one of them, you know, could it have been spent somewhere else? That's all. And without upsetting other people. That's always been the only problem I've had with Tennis Canada. I mean, you know, I know all the people there. You know, Adam McDaddy lived in my house in London. I mean, you know, Doug Burke, he was the best man at Doug Burke's wedding, and he's, you know, who's my partner. So it's not the people, it's what you're caught in the politics. And, you know, it's very, very hard because when you're in that situation, like I was, and, you know, you're about to lose your job, you go through a depression or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's tough.
So I respect everything. It's just that we should never be, we live in a democratic society, and the voice of opposition should always be evaluated for the value it has to make ourselves better. That's all. And, you know,
why do you think? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I said, you know, and I've designated myself as that voice only because, as I said to you from the beginning, I've been fortunate. I mean, I was part of an ITF meeting in France with the president of the Swedish Association, the Spanish Association, the French Association, the vice president of the ITF was from Tunisia, and how they were trying to stop when the Australian fella left the ITF, that the power would not go to the American, but would remain in Europe. And, you know, like after 3 hours of listening to them, and they all knew me because we played, Allen was there. We had played Davis Cup, so they all knew who I was. I said, well, if you guys would stop fucking fighting with each other, excuse my language, you know, you have enough votes to block everything. So just decide, fight within yourself first, elect somebody, give the other person that finishes second the European head of the European Association, and the other guy gets, you know, and that's what they did. It was something like that simple. You know, they just had to get away from. So I happen to be lucky, and I have that insight. I'm very good at visions, and then finding ways to get there, knowing that you're always going to have to change. And the most important thing is finding the right people, you know, And like I say to everybody, I hope you enjoy working with me, because at the end of the day, I'm taking all your ideas and I'm going to say it's mine. But, I mean, I've been made by guys like Louis Caillé and, Ari Novak and so forth, guys. So, people don't understand. Sometimes you have a persona when you play. You have a persona. When I was a Davis Cup captain, I created what it was called with David Cox, premeditated insanity. Because at times, first of all, we had a team that really did not feel like they belonged at that level. First thing I did was we went from secondary hotels to the top hotels. And then, we just started, with everybody. It's, when I wanted to go crazy, I'd look at Dave Cox and I said, I'm going crazy now. Because it's an act. You have to support your players. You have to support, when you're playing in Paraguay, after they've beaten France, Czech, and the U.S., you have to have something to fight. So there's different persona. So people see me a lot as a coach, when really, I'm more of a builder and so forth. And, I have an unbelievable amount of knowledge, which I like to share with people. And if I'm not right, argue with me. Just don't. Yeah. The one thing I hate the most is for you to tell me, oh, yeah, you're so emotional. And, that's what, like people that can't argue with me say, okay, So.
Yeah. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. And from Tennis Canada's perspective, they look at the numbers, in terms of what they've achieved. And they're number one in the world. Yeah, they won the Davis Cup, which is fantastic. And they have Felix, top 10. They have Dennis, who used to be top 10, like he's pretty up high there. They have Bianca, they have Layla, they have Gabby on the doubles team. I'm forgetting somebody, there's many players that are doing good, like juniors succeeding, like Boko, Cross, you have other guys. So for them, in my opinion, that's like, well, we're doing a good job. Why would we change something? Right? Well, it's hard to justify the change when things are going well.
Yeah, the thing is, it's one thing to take credit for something. But if taking credit is giving it $250,000 for a coach to travel with your player, and your player to say that Tennis Canada is the reason why and the regional centers are great, that's misinformation. Milos was in Europe. Okay, Dennis certainly was not at the national center. Layla was not, except for 6 months. Bianca was not in Montreal. Vicky Maboko, I coached her from when she was 4.
Yeah.
I moved the family from Toronto there. So we did it. Kayla Cross came from London. So those two players are and there's another girl, I can't remember her name. She's very good.
Stakusic, yeah, Marina Stakusic.
Yeah, who I saw. Those are the only three players right now in the pipeline. So if there's no more players in the pipeline, who's responsible? The clubs or Tennis Canada and their regional center? How many players from Vancouver, Bogdan, have made it to the national team in the last 15 years that the program's been operating? Name me one.
To the national team?
Yeah. Davis Cup on the tour. Because
Bester?
That's what this is about. Huh?
Bester? Philip Bester?
Philip Bester was not, I don't think, maybe he was. I don't know if he was in their regional center. But, no.
He wasn't in the, I don't think he was in a regional center. He was training in Florida.
Bester was at IMG.
Yes, that's right. He was in IMG, but okay. But I meant but he was from BC.
You have to be careful with you.
No. But he was from BC. But I see what you're saying.
That whole program there, the whole program of the regional center and the clubs have developed nothing. We in Burlington, we've developed nothing except Vicky Maboko. That's one of the three is out there. I mean, did we do it or not? Yes, So, I mean, she was there 8 years. I mean, that must count for something,
Yeah.
So if the regional centers were so good, don't you think they would have developed more players? So what they're saying is that the players that they're getting are not good enough. Okay, so where are the players that they're getting? Well, they come from progressive tennis, so make progressive tennis better. Make sure that when the kid turns 11, there is not one flaw, technically, no red flag, that the game is built on analytics, that they know. I mean, how many patterns is there from the baseline? I'm sorry, you win the cross-court battles, you take the ball out of the middle, or you dominate with your forehand. That's all that happens. That is all that happens. Analytics, they tell you, when you serve on the deuce side, 72% wide. When the ball comes back in the middle, 75% inside out. You win 67% of those points. So you train kids that way from the start. So why a kid, we started at our place training our kids because my son works with the youngest. I said, let's see. Oh, no, you don't want. I mean, I have a coach that left recently and he says, oh, no, you can't teach kids swinging volleys. I'm like, what are you talking about? Kids can't do anything. We've got kids now that, hit every single ball, shoulder height, come into the net and get past. And parents say, well, what are you doing? Because they have to learn. Isn't it funny how serve and volley has come back? Or not, serve and volley, but net play has come back. I've said for 15 years, the reason it stopped is because people did not know how to transition to the net. They transitioned with topspin, which made them easy to get past. The ball got there faster. The ball was higher.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at, I was brought up on the Australians. I mean, they chipped the ball short. They made it impossible for you to have a good passing shot. You could see it. You look at the analytics of points won. Look at Alcaraz, what he's done. Oh, now everybody, oh, yeah, of course. Of course. The game, if you study war, like I love, when I was a kid, I studied strategy and war and so forth. Not the actual fighting, but the tactics and the strategy and so forth. Those things don't change. They remain the same. What happens is the weapons, the technical skills change. But the game themselves get the play. So what's the biggest problem we have in Canada with our younger kids? If you ask Tennis Canada, they'll tell you they don't know how to play and they don't know how to move. Why? Because our certification system, which is great, is based on upper body technical skills. So what has to be developed, we don't have play cards. So does that mean we teach our kids, 5 or 6 crossovers, left foot to left foot? They can't do it. Of course they can do it. They do it better than the other kids because something new for them, the older kids. So you teach the movement. You train them. You teach the technique within the tactical intention. So, can a kid that's 7 years old, every time the ball is at 3/4 court, hit shoulder height, come into the net? Of course. Of course. Oh, but he's not going to do. You want your kid to do good when he's 8 or when he's 12? Look at Milos. Milos did not know how to approach the net. How important would it be? So they tried to make him approach the net. He never felt really comfortable. He never looked. He got better and better. But it's not, like guys like Cash and Rafter, Sampras. You hit and you know where the next one's coming. And so
that's right.
That fraction of a second. So we went away from teaching that. And, that's why you have to always question and see. I've got coaches. I've had very good coaches in my academy. When I'm always amazed, Doug Burke and I sit there and go, it must be so nice to be so smart. Like they really think they know it all. Like they've never played on the tour. They've never coached on the tour. But, they go to YouTube or they get a guy that the guy from out in California that used to coach Sharapova. You know, he's the flavor of the month. You know, wow. You know, one of the best coaches I ever saw was Nick Bollettieri. You know what he did? He was behind the person and go, yes, no, yes, yes, no. I mean, God, you know, intellectual masturbation is not coaching. Coaching is getting the player to do the right thing, you know?
Yeah, well, he was reinforcing the right thing in that example.
He was. No, he was. I mean, he had enough people. He had enough people around him to tell him what to do.
That's right. But listen, let's transition, Pierre, from what can we do as as a country, as federation, better, in your opinion, to what can we do better as coaches, perhaps. And I want to start with one simple question: what made ACE produce so many good players, and to this day you guys are producing top level players that are coming out of your academy, whether they're playing like going to play like international level, like professional tournaments, or whether they're going to universities, top provincial, top national players. So what do you believe in the heart of that success?
One's an approach. You know, it's an approach. It's a set of rules. It's a set. Values are very important.
Can you elaborate those, please?
Yeah, well, I think most importantly, you want to develop a good human being. And the greatest achievement I've had in tennis is the people that phone me and say, 20 years ago, you should have been tougher on me, and when I was already, too tough, And the love that I receive from people that I haven't heard, that, thank me for having been part of their life. And what they don't realize, I thank them, because if you're a good coach, you learn from your kids. And there's nothing better I'm not crazy about working with adults. I love kids, because kids have got, no, what do you call, kind of, it's transparent completely.
Yeah, they're very pure, in their intention. Exactly.
So
if they like you, they like you.
Yeah, the values, being honest, being thankful, being so appreciative of having the chance in this world of being able to play tennis. Like when there's kids everywhere, like I lived 2 years in Africa, and I worked in the Ivory Coast, and I worked in Senegal, and I worked in Algeria, and I worked in Morocco. The talent that's there is unbelievable. But because of the political structure, the money from the ITF goes to the federation, and the federation sends the president to Wimbledon. Like it doesn't. And the kids that become good players are the kids that work as ball boys around the tennis club, so they never go to school. So, how about finding a way to mesh tennis and school together so that, you want to play there has to be a way of helping, because that continent, it breaks my heart. You look at Vicky Moboko. When you talk to the parents about their life in the Congo, I don't know if you know the background with the Belgium coming in and Leopold making, it's unbelievable what these people have got to go through. They come to Canada, work 2 jobs. 3 kids through university, and Vicky Moboko. I just go like, how can I complain about anything? So to be thankful with your parents, to be thankful with everybody, and I think one of the things that Tennis Canada is starting to do, and we're trying to do is to educate the parents. So if you can teach a 5 or 6 year old, can you teach a 5 or 6 year old mental skills? Well, respecting, the people, say thank you to your coach. The coach also has to say hi when you come in. Those type of things, looking eye to eye. When you get in the car with your parents, say thank you for driving me home and driving me to tennis. To appreciate. So, to develop human beings, first and foremost, and anybody that does not adhere by those, you have to have a talk, because kids all mess up. I never have, of course, never in my life, but, how lucky am I that I had second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth chances, So you have to understand that one thing that always struck me, Richard Schomburn, we're in Thailand and Indonesia with Bill Cowan, and at dinner, and I said, Richard, what I don't understand is when I get my national coaches together and I decide this is the player that we have to look at and this is the player, and I said, how is it that my national coaches never have the same choices as I do? And he says, well, have your national coaches played on the tour? And I said, no. He says, well, coaches that are developed in kind of a closed environment where you learn about the sport, they like to have people, because everybody says discipline. They have to have people that listen to them. He says the really good ones are pains in the ass. And, Daniel Nestor. I said to Daniel, let's sit down and do your annual plan. Oh, no, not that stuff again. Daniel's going to make it easy for you. How many times a week are you coming to practice? 5 times in the afternoon, 5 times in the morning. Okay. How about the weekend? Yeah, once on Saturday. Okay. How about fitness? Every day. Okay. Signed. What do you mean? I said, that's your annual plan. I turned to my coaches, and they all wanted to kick him out. We're talking about Yves Boulet, Simon Barker, Ari Novick. And I go, I don't have any problems working with him, because whenever I worked with him, I'd say, you can't do that. You can't do that. And of course, he'd show me exactly what he could do. So, they wanted him to behave like Chris Pridham. That was very, like the great ones are a pain in the. I think Dennis Shapovalov must be a little bit. Okay, Felix is a different one. But, so I think that, you have to love educating kids. And yet, the one thing that I feel the worst about is that I've had so many kids and so many that I haven't had the time to really spend the time with. And wrongly so, I spent so much time with the better kids, because that's what made the academy grow. And, I should have been more careful, because each kid that's in your program is as important as the other one, So, Ace Tennis, or All Canadian, started with, from when we had the tennis school at Mississippi State. And the Bollettieri approach, the Hopman approach, I decided in Canada, if we have the best swimmers in the world and the best figure skaters in the world, this was in 1985 or something like that, what's different than our tennis players? 2 a day practice. American football, 2 a day practice. So, you double the time right away.
Simple, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's not that I'm smart. And then, what's important? The fitness. Okay, so you get a fitness coach that's got some tennis background, and you can teach him to be a tennis coach and also be a fitness coach. So, I think then we had a psychological coach, Harry Papavesis. So we got involved in all aspects of a player's development. And, the thing that has happened at All Canadian and Ace, you look at the number of coaches that have come through ours, whether it's Adam, whether it's Simon, whether it's Paul Beck, whether it's Jerome Fournier. I think we have over 20 head coaches, Matt Baccarani and so forth, that have come through our system. And why didn't they stay there? Well, because I can't afford to pay them $150,000. And, it's like when Simon Bartram was our head of the academy, and he got offered the job at the Lawn. I pleaded with him not to leave. But, look at what it's done for him. It's,
yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. It's, it's really caring, and, and caring about your coaches. like safe sport and all of these things and making them understand it. I mean, I'm French. I've kissed every single girl, that I worked with. Like now I have to, if you're not 76 years old, you can't get away with that stuff, So you have to keep on educating. It's like now this year, I'm developing a new system. It's called the ACE system, which is how you can run group training for 10 years so that it's integrated during the year and it's progressive. So you go back and forth. The one problem I had was how to develop the little ACEs, which is the startup. And I got a guy, Daniel Rosenbaum, who came from Brazil this summer, and we hired him, and he helped us with all kinds of ideas, but I wanted related to analytics, and I haven't found the answer because I've never been there. So now, out of nowhere, Robbie Menard talked to me about this guy from Montreal. His name is Simon Legaré. He used to be Louis Caillet's right-hand man. He's formed more coaches in the country than anybody else. He's a Wilson representative, the Wilson rep for Quebec. And he's developed this new system, which shows how to introduce people to the sport using the ball controls. It's the same thing that happened as when I saw Louis Caillet. I said, this is it. So I gave it to my coaches. They see it. And now we're bringing them to Ontario and Quebec. Like 80% of the academies are using it. But they're not using it in here because Tennis Canada doesn't want to have something that competes with their level one. But, we're going to use it and we're going to promote it. Not to compete with Tennis Canada, but to show Tennis Canada this is the way it should be done. It's time to revisit our certification system. I was one that quarterbacked that whole thing, I got rid of the old people. I took it over. Then I brought Ari in and Louis, I brought Ari in because I couldn't listen to Louis. He drove me nuts. He was so brilliant that I couldn't understand what he was saying. It took me a year to understand. So, it's time to revisit because what we need is we really need to maximize the time that the kids are into tennis from 5 to 10. And how do you do that? By forming the coaches and by having the content. Don't ask the coaches to do the content. Ask the coaches to improve the content. And at the end of each year, you improve it. That's a collaborative effort. That's a partnership. That's when you say, how should we do the regional set? Maximize the human resources in the private and public sector. We're all Canadians. We're all like each other. Why not all together? Let's put our egos aside, It's like somebody asked me yesterday, what do you want out of it? I said, I don't know. Maybe you can send me some more money so I can finish my fence here in the Dominican Republic, but that, I don't want anything else. I've received everything from this sport, I'm so thankful.
Yeah. So listen, it's always fascinating for me to talk to coaches. And when I ask them, what makes you so successful in tennis and coaching, and 99% of the time I hear the answer is, well, it's values. It's making sure that we develop good person first. And that's exactly what you said right away. So it's just, again, sends a strong message to every young coach, to myself. Again, it's like another confirmation of, that's the way, because I'm a strong believer in that too, that, there is always life after tennis, and you always, have to make sure that you leave a good citizen behind. Like when they're not playing tennis, they're not traumatized by that experience, and then they're not bringing those traumas and dramas, in their life. They remain like a good person, with strong values of hard work, of honesty, of respect, of humility. So that's fantastic that you're bringing that up. Pierre, I wanted to. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just want you to know we're working on a special edition of On Court.
Yes.
We have so much that it's 3 parts. One, the history of what happened and the history, because people don't understand, You know, when I was brought up, I knew the history of Canadian tennis. People don't know who Grant Connell is. You know, how can you not know who Grant Connell is? He's the one that carried us into the world group, you know?
Yeah.
So the thing is, the second part is, I think there's 80 people that have played Davis Cup for Canada over the years. Some of them are dead, but I try to reach out, and I'm up to almost 40 of the people. And I've asked them, and it's gonna come out, just an article on all three of them, you know, and it's funny. Like I asked them three questions. One, what did it mean for you growing up? Two, what's your best memory of Davis Cup? And three, what did it mean? So look at this. This is Nestor. It was always a dream of mine to represent Canada in any capacity. So being part of the Davis Cup was very special. Being a part of the team in '90s when we qualified the first time, and Connell carried the team on his back. And then he says some crazy 5-set single match against Edberg and whoever, Rios and Curtin, qualifying again against Brazil. Amazing to watch these young superstars come through. They are more deserving and have been setting a new standard of excellence. You know, to be able to talk. Grant Connell and I were best friends, and something happened. Politics got involved in the decision making. I had to make a decision between giving the money to Nestor and Janacek and LeBlanc Leroux, or paying for the sports psychologist. And it forced me to make a decision. So I made the decision to go with the kids, the future. And it created a code. That happened 30 years ago. And I never really quite understood. I touched base with Grant 3 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, on a Saturday afternoon, Doug Burke, Grant, and I talked for 2.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
I have never laughed so much. And, you know, like, the thing that we have, you know, I have the same thing with Billy Cowan. I mean, you know, those type of, friendships that you develop, those type, you know, it's wonderful. So I just wish that we could, the thing that I want the most is for Tennis Canada to find a way to maximize and use the resources and listen to the resources outside and find a way with all the money they have and to be able to recruit everybody to make this sport what it should be in our country. And guys like you know, you keep on doing it and so forth. Not really. That's it.
Thank you, Pierre.
Guys. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's talk about coaches, since we're kind of like shifting this way. What do you think coaches need to do better in our sport today? Because you've seen them all, like through your academy, throughout your years.
I think it depends on what their goals are. I have seen very few coaches that can work at all the different levels. So, you know, if you're a great progressive coach, like I had that discussion with my son, who's a very good progressive coach. And he felt bad because he was losing his kids going up to some of our other coaches. You know, and I said, well, if you're willing to do your level 3, start traveling and doing all that. Oh, no, I don't want to do it. So that's not, you know, so come to terms. You know, be satisfied. Coaches have got to think that it's not just a job where they're making money. They're there to help, you know, people to learn, and especially when they work with kids, to develop the whole part of the kid. So, you know, when you ask me, what should coaches do? It's very, very hard, because for the last 20 years, private sector coaches have not had the opportunity to travel as assistants on the world tour, whether juniors or whatever. So it makes it very hard for them to know what it's like, that experience. And without that experience, how can you prepare? I mean, the learning curve while you're on tour, is at the detriment of your player.
It's massive.
So,
it's massive to be there.
Yeah. So I think that coaches, have to embrace that there's such a great fraternity, and how can we make it better? But when coaches get together, it's mostly about their own agendas. And, I can understand because they look through a colored glass, but it's a bigger thing. And I see it all the time. I listen to these meetings, and, we have meetings about the pipeline, and it ends up being meetings about kids 14, 15. The pipeline's 5 years old. That's where it starts. If we don't start there, what are we going to do? We're still going to get, kids with problems, which can't set their racket at the right height and swing level on a forehand attack. I saw kids on the national team not being able to do that a few years ago. So, there has to be some standards, and there has to be ways for people to progress. The worst part I felt for the last 20 years about the regional centers is I felt for my coaches, because a lot of those coaches were as capable as the coaches at the national centers, but they never got the chance. Sylvain Bruno would not be a national coach if he would not have had the chance. That's the proof right there. There's a lot of other coaches, that if they travel where there's a coach, men and women traveling to Europe, well, the secondary coaches, they're on a mentorship. In the old days, you could not get a level 4 coach in Tennis Canada unless you had been on the tour for a year. That way you could do a report on what it wasn't so. Now, you wanted more. How could you get more coaches? You can't do that because nobody's had the chance.
Yeah,
so you see,
that's right.
If you want to improve, if you want to stimulate the coach, everybody wants to develop a great player. If the coach is willing to do the work, he should be able. He should be helped. He should be held by everybody. And if he's not capable, well, the group decides, I'm sorry, you're not doing the work. This is the work. And it works. If you make people accountable and you have systems that keep them accountable, then, it's common sense to make the decision. So, I'd really like for coaches to be more transparent. Or, no, it's not more transparent. I would like for the coaches to be provided with questions that allow them to answer in terms of what's right or wrong. Not Tennis Canada is going to matter how I answer this. I've heard so many coaches bitch about the regional center, and then they go to the meetings and they all think it's good because they're going to get some money for their players. So, then Adam talks to me and says, oh, yeah, these guys, they're all in favor. I said, come on, Adam. I mean, if you're paying somebody, of course they're going to be in favor. That's the way it works. So, the thing is, and even within Tennis Canada, I think they should have been much more open. It flabbergasts me that I have a company that survived over 40 years, that's done as well as possible, and I went to getting the Davis Cup team into the World Group for the first 2 times, and then it didn't happen for 10 years after that. And, I developed the coaching certification. I kept on that nobody asked my opinion on things. I mean, Issam Jaleli and Ange Jabber, we talk. I just can't understand. That's what I say to Doug, people don't understand, we all have expertise. So, then you discuss, okay, does that make sense? Why not? And so forth. What is it based on? Show me the proof that is really. It's like, a kid's supposed to play 5 times a week, this many times. That's the norm. How many champions are the norm? Champions are outliers. They come out, out of nowhere. They're the ones that do things differently. Serena and Venus certainly did not come in through any regional centers. Look at the regional centers in Italy. Bye-bye, love. They're all gone. Look at how many players they have. Why is that? Why is it that national centers have been disbanded everywhere? Because it creates, a negative. I think we should have national centers. Just how do you run them? You run them to make everybody feel part of the team. Every single coach that works is in the Tennis Canada, part of the Canadian team. That's how I think it should. If you approach it that way, then you get the goodwill of everybody.
Yeah.
If you listen to me for 5 minutes, you get my goodwill. But as soon as people say, "Oh, you're so opinionated," well, maybe I should be opinionated. I have enough experience to be opinionated, and if my opinion is wrong, play the devil's advocate. Okay, I'll explain to you why.
Yeah.
And it might not be good enough reason, but at least you understand. So you can understand where my reluctance to regional centers came about when in 1990, my club was destroyed by regional centers. So I saw the same thing happening again. And, look, how lucky are we to be where we are in tennis? I mean, how lucky are we that they won the Davis Cup? People don't understand that this could never have happened when you had to go through South America and play, in Chile.
That's right.
I mean, golly. So, in 5 setters and everything else, it doesn't matter. We did it. So, hats off. Let's try to see how we can seize that moment and make something out of it, because I'm not sure it's going to happen that often.
That's true.
I mean,
that's true.
We're lucky. Bianca, Dennis, Milos, Felix, Layla. Ooh, those are players.
That's right.
Before, when we were there in the 1990s, I had 5, 6 players that went inside the top 100. But it was a start. We never were there before. So, it's progressive. So now it's feasible. So, and I hope Adam and his group are, smart enough to figure out how to use this groundswell of, support to make it real. And I think it's got to be politics. I think it's got to be working with the public sector so that, then you can have private academies or whatever. But we need facilities. Like where you are. How much court time do you have for your programs?
4 hours a day, 4 days a week.
For how many courts? 4?
3 courts.
That's when you want to run a full-scale program and you look, 6, 7, twice a week, 8 and 9, 3 times a week, 10, 11, 5 times a week, 12 and above, 6 times a week, and the number of hours, 12 and above, it's impossible. It's impossible. You can run a nice little program, but if you don't have a big program, then you cannot afford the overheads that we can afford in our marketing and so forth. So that's where Tennis Canada's got to take that place and provide that type of assistance to the coaches. Okay, Logan, you've got 4 courts. Here's where I think, you can run your most, your best program. You have to understand that when your kid's going to become 13, if he's good enough, he's going to have to go somewhere else and train, or 6 times a week or whatever. Then it makes sense. But, there's answers to all these things, It's not, who cares about complaining if you don't come up with answers or solutions? I'm not saying my solutions are perfect, but they're solutions. Let's look at, anybody with solutions. And everybody gets very defensive. As long as you say something, oh my God, he hates us. Oh, what? Come on, Adam. Adam is like part of my family. Golly. Ari, the same thing. But, that doesn't mean that families don't always agree. Yeah. But you try to make each other better.
Yeah, I think, the most important part is that we ask ourselves, and that's what makes us better people, better coaches, and that's what made you so successful in your career. Asking questions like, what can I do better with this player, with those players, with those group of players, with that academy? And then now you're looking at things a little bit broader, like, I mean, for many years, but it's basically asking the same question, but applying it at a bigger scale. You know, so what can we do better as federation? What can we do better as country, as every individual academy, to make tennis in general better in our country? And I think it's perfectly reasonable question to ask. You know, there's nothing wrong to have a debate on that, because there is no, like, just like in tennis, there is no right or wrong. You know, there's not the way.
Well, I think there are some rights and wrongs.
Yeah, but what I was trying to say, like, there is no one way. Yeah, there is better ways that we can do things.
But let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you think, if you're going to write a paper on an academy, do you think an academy should have annual plans for each programs?
Yes.
Should the annual plans be broken down in cycles and identify progressively what's going to be worked on?
I think so, yeah.
Should an academy have a fitness coordinator?
Yeah. If the academy has an ambition of developing world-class players, best national players, 100%.
So it's that simple. Look, I don't know that club, the Veneto Club.
Yeah.
Wow. I look at that, you know, like who did I talk to? Oh, Billy Cowan. You know, I thought, wow, what a great amount of coaches you have there. How great is that to have all those coaches? Dean Colburn, who came from us, Billy was with us as well, you know, Bobby Mulhall, who trained with us, you know. So, wow, how great, you know, that they've been able to put, because they're in Toronto and it's close by for the coaches. But, you know, like, is it possible? Is it possible to build a little place where they can go and do fitness? You know, there's all kinds of different things. But, you know, it's very simple. You put down what is required. You ask, what is required? So, I mean, I have a friend of mine who's one of the best coaches. He says to me, I don't believe in these annual plans. I went, what? He says, no. He says, you know, I go on the court at the beginning of the week, and I remember what happens last week, and, you know, I improve on that. I said, oh, that's very good. I said, what program is that? He says, oh, my national program. I said, okay, what, you have provincial? Yeah. You have under 12? Oh, yeah. Okay, and you have progressive? How are they doing it there? I said, I don't know. I said, when you're traveling with your daughter on the tour, and you're not there, who comes in and decides what they're going to do this week? Oh, he says, I tell them. You know? I mean, that sounds, you know, how can that be the best way to develop? You know, like you have enough problems getting all the coaches speak about the same thing. You know, because you put 30 coaches in front of an athlete, you know, they'll get 30 opinions on what they should be. Who's the right coach? Well, the right coach is the one who picks the common denominator. The common denominator is, if you fix that, you fix a whole bunch of the other ones. So everybody can find something that's wrong and correct it. But it's in what do you identify that makes the biggest change in the athlete? So, you know, and that has to be like a team effort. And if you're, you know, if your coaches you're all on the same wavelength, you know, that, Pierre, you're full of crap. That doesn't work. Let's do, you know, you're right. You know, that's it. You change it. It's all that they know, because they're the ones that work there. So teamwork and cooperation. You know, I'd love to see. I haven't seen how one program operates besides mine. You know, how great would it be for somebody to go and find out? For me to go and find out what they're doing at that, what you're doing, what Will is doing. You know?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'd love to do that. Do you think some people would benefit from coming to see what we're doing? Of course.
100%, yeah.
So, like I'd love to have coaches come in and see what we're doing and say, oh, yeah, why are you doing that? I have videos on 8 of our courts in Burlington. I sit here and I can watch what's happening.
Yeah.
I call my son and I go, I'm sorry, were you selling stocks? He says, what are you talking about? I said, I saw you on the phone during the lesson. I said, I'm sorry, that doesn't happen. It's just a matter of, like, okay, you tell your coach, all right, come on, guys, this is, we're professional. This is how we do it. Doesn't mean that you're not crazy. Look at me. You can be crazy, but when we work, we work. We have a responsibility to these kids, to this game.
100%.
I'm going to come and see your program, by the way.
Sounds good. Yeah. Listen, I will want to do the same thing to your program. Like, if that's okay with you, because I love learning, and that's.
We have some very interesting people there. We had one guy who, Carrillo. Have you ever heard of Carrillo?
I think I have.
He's our vice president. He flew in from Ottawa. He was working in Edmonton as a professor, asked me for a job. And I said, what's your background in tennis? He says, well, I used to be an Olympic swimmer. I said, what? It's from Ukraine. So, we keep on talking. He says, give me a job. I need $36,000 and, you'll see, you'll be happy with me. His wife was a doctor in Russia, but she did cancer research here. So, I'm still uncertain. He shows me a videotape of a 7-year-old, and I go, wow, who is that girl? He says, it's my daughter. I said, who's her coach? He says, I am. I said, what? I said, how did you do that? He said, I went on those Tennis Canada videos. The girl turned out to be Victoria, who was with Layla on the same national team. She went to MIT. She just got her master's degree. And this guy just makes a fortune for me, because he knows, so here's somebody from a different sphere,
That's right.
It's just, and this is the funniest thing. We had another Russian guy, Igor, Igor?
I think so. Yeah.
So, Ukrainians in those days, he just followed what the, Russians said, and he did it all his way. And so anyway, I just keep on getting on tangents here. Sorry.
Yeah. So let's talk. Like, I just have one more question for you in terms of coaches' passion. Like, do you feel like today's coaches, new generation of coaches, have the same passion than they used to? Is it different? Maybe their motivators are different these days. What do you think?
Well, I've already answered that question. I think our system took away the passion away. So, I see some guys that are still very, very passionate. Tommy at the National Center, he's very, very, he's only limited because of the experiences that he has. He can work with 14-year-olds. But he should be everywhere around the world seeing how 14-year-olds work. He should be a little pizzazz everywhere to see exactly. But, so I think it's very hard for coaches to think about developing professional players because there's not a pathway. The only pathway is you have to be a professional player in Canada or a pseudo-professional player like Hugo or Peter Polansky, and then you get a job because, you've been in the system. So any coach that's not played at the Pro Tour, how do they become, a Pro Tour? And let's face it, there's all kinds of coaches out there. So that was one of the things that upset me the most about the regional center. Was the way that they were structured. It took away the dream for young coaches to become great coaches. And, it's something that they should reintroduce somehow because every coach should, different paths, Like I said, I talked to Seymour Rose, who was working with Vicky Maboko till recently. And, he went to Mississippi State, the same place as I did. And I said, Simone, understand one thing. I spent 5 years traveling on tour, and it was hectic. It was very good from an ego standpoint. It was very good but I missed the growing up of my kids. And I'm fortunate that I got a second chance later on in life when they were older. It happened. So with my 3 kids, but I said, when I see a problem with one of my kids, I often think, God, if I would have been there, maybe I could have helped them overcome this. So I said, be careful. Being on the tour, ego-wise, is great. But from a personal development standpoint, it's not always, what's best. So the same way as you want players that are well balanced and have great values and great human beings, which, I'm so proud of so many. I think that it's very, very important that a coach understand what is required and what he has to give away to go on there. And not only that, if you're on tour, one bad loss and you're fired. It's that simple. So it's a very, very tough way to make a living. It's a very exciting way. Like, people that want to have it, because our future, we're going to need future leaders.
That's right.
So like, let's mentor them. Let's give them the opportunity. Let's create more and more players, more coaches. More tennis.
Yeah. Pierre, I've been listening to you for almost 2 hours, and I can continue doing this, and maybe we should do a part 2 at some point. But honestly, it's been a big pleasure talking to you. It's fascinating that you were always, just like short drive away, and I wish we would do this earlier, to connect like this, because I learned a lot of very interesting points, and just big thank you for you to dedicating this time of yours and sharing this with everybody. I'm sure they learned a lot as well. Thank you so much.
There's nothing I'd rather do than share, not to show people how smart we are, but this is how we do it. You can do it. It's easy. Use that template. Use this. It's just poor coaches, between their personal life, the hours which are not in a row, they don't have time to do all these things. So the coaching certification should also provide ways to make the jobs more efficient for the coaches. And as much as I'm a great believer, I would always defend my players. I'm the same way about coaches, because I know so many coaches that have gotten a certain age, and what do they have to go through, and people that have given time to their athletes and don't get recognized. That happens quite often, and it's something that you have to learn to accept, because they'll recognize it 10 years, 15 years later. But you have to feel good that you're doing the right things. And if you do the right things, good things keep on happening to you.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to finish our conversation. A great message for everybody, really. From coaches to parents to the federation. So again, Pierre, thank you so much for joining, and I wish you all the best. And I'm
coming to see you this summer.
Perfect. It's a deal. Okay, Pierre. See you later.
Anything I can do to help you, please feel free. Templates, everything.
Of course.
I like to share. Okay.
Of course. I'll connect with you as soon as possible about that, for sure. All right, Pierre.
Take care.